Okay, so we're recording now. We're all set. First of all, whoever made postings over the last week about the lecture we had last week, I really, really am grateful. The postings were unbelievable, like literally unbelievable. I always keep telling them that I have students from Mars. I'm absolutely convinced. I don't know where you come from, but it is just amazing. The work is amazing, and some students have posted drafts of their assignments. So as you can, if you actually look at my comments on the drafts, you will notice that the first draft I spoke a lot about, second, third, but then I keep saying reread my comments from the other assignments, from about the other drafts, because what is happening, there's a continuously the same problem happening in those drafts, which I am trying to overcome through our meetings. But students fall into those traps of doing these lists of, I'm on Facebook and I do this thing as my literacy activities. So thank you for the postings. Thank you for the drafts. And whoever is listening to this podcast, the idea is that actually we use those texts, those postings by our students, and we recognize if we actually use those thoughts or those sentences, we acknowledge from whom it was and on what day it was posted. But I do want students to read and integrate it in their own assignment 1 and then later on in assignment 2, because it's part of our history. These thoughts are just as good as Winch et al. They're excellent. They're part of our dialogue. A textbook is a part of a dialogue. The discussions we have here are part of the dialogue, and also the discussions we have on LearnLine. So they are not produced just to share, but they also are also there to have an impact. So that's really wonderful, and I'm really grateful to you for that. So what I wanted to do today is have a meeting today for some time. It looks like it, but we're not in a hurry. But what I wanted to do is first invite you to meet Professor Koo from Kuala Lumpur. From what university is it?
University Kebangsaan Malaysia, which translates as the National University of Malaysia.
Right. So there you go. Professor Koo is actually an adjunct professor also here in our School of Education, and she will be coming on and off and supporting our understandings about the role of university, internationalization, globalization, and literacy. So as it is, she's worked now with postgraduate students, and I get comments on Facebook. She's freaking me out.
Oh dear.
Actually, it was both of us. Because when students sit in a particular comfort, when you get a person who actually has lots of experience and produced books on literacy, who is now taking people out of the little corner and saying the world is bigger than just getting a job. So that's very interesting. So first of all, what I might do is allow Professor Koo to just say something for as long as she wants to, and then I will take over, and then we will integrate her in our discussions. So I'll just put this on you so that we can hear you well.
Me and technology is not brilliant, but okay, I'll manage. Hi. I'm really glad to be in CDU. This is my first trip. I'm 4 days old. It's been a very exciting journey, although I'm from the tropics, but the stickiness and humidity is is something to reckon with. But Dr. Anya and I have had interesting dialogues about literacy and engagement around literacy and what it is to have dialogues between texts in context. I wrote a book which was published last year, and I brought it, and it's called Language and Culture in Multilingual Contexts. And I'd like to read from the blurb at the back of the book. And it says, one of the enormous challenges confronting societies, communities, governments, and the individual is the question on the ways of teaching and learning, so that citizens acquire the worldviews, the values, the attitudes, the knowledges, the literacies, and strategies to become contributing members of society in increasingly competitive, culturally contested, and unequal environments. What I'm trying to say here is the world has become a very complex place. The complexity comes about through cultural globalization. Some people tell me cultural globalization offers me opportunities. I think it does. It offers me, for example, some kind of mobility. Universities are connected. Anna and I are connected through an email, not yet through Facebook, and so on. At the same time, cultural globalization can be seen as a tsunami. Why? Because countries in certain parts of the world, cultures in certain parts of a country are threatened by the global tsunami, say, of English, of the English language. Now, why do I say that? Because the English language that appears to be coming in from the first world, America, England, Australia, is seen by many students who have to face English as a foreign language. They see that as a tsunami because the way they have been socialized, the way they have been brought up is in multilingual, multicultural worlds where English is one of many languages. It's not their first language. It's not the language of the family. It's a language that they have to learn, maybe one of 4 or 5, which they have not been socialized into, especially in their primary life roles in their families. So the challenge for them is, how do I have a lot of students who tell me, how do I write like someone out there in the first world? How do I get through my IELTS? How do I get through my competency tests that are internationally set? There is this large gap. There is this big gap. How do we, as students, how do we bridge the gap between where we stand as EFL students, as a student who has many languages, but with varying degrees of proficiency? English is probably one of many other languages. They have not much proficiency in it. And their question is, how do I get to this standard? One of my students who is in university, she struggles with it a lot, and she told me some time ago, I will send you some of the slides. She said, I am neither here nor there. I belong to many cultural worlds, many language worlds, but I don't feel that I belong to any one in particular. Now, in terms of language, I'm not a master nor a mistress. I am in the in-between spaces. And that is the identity that is sometimes very uncomfortable. And I think as teachers, many of you are teachers, many of you are going to be teachers, you're going to be engaged with literacy issues. The world has changed. How do we engage with such learners? How do we engage ourselves with such complexity? The complexity of languages and of cultures meeting together. And when we say meeting, it seems to be a meeting space, perhaps a comfortable space. But meetings bring tensions, they bring engagement, sometimes they bring disengagement. So we are exploring in literacy how teachers, how people who are aware can engage with the complexity of that space. I think on that note.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Professor Cole. Actually, we will be addressing today this kind of thing. I'm psychic. If you didn't know it, you will experience it today. Because actually, is it doing this noise? Is my so the issues that Professor Cole mentioned today will be actually in our class today. So, typically, any ideas why I'm starting with what is not a text? Come on, guys. It's all about imagination and subversion. There's no critical thinking unless it's subversive. So there's this, Max Planck said it, and maybe someone else said it as well. They said, a sign of a genius is someone who can see things in a non-habitual way. Everybody sees things this way, and someone says, what about that way? And luckily for you, if you teach in a primary school, 98% of your kids there see things in a non-habitual way because they haven't been yet socialized enough. They're little geniuses with wings sitting there and imagining. So let's play along. Where did I put the title of the lecture today? Text, what is not a text? I know it's 9 o'clock and I'm the only one filled with coffee, am I? Anyone else has coffee in the morning? I couldn't live without it in the morning. In fact, the day when we had a power outage, next day I was off sick. I had a migraine. It was the lack of coffee in effect. So the only way you know who is your mother when you know who is not. You only know who is not your mother but is still related to you when you learn through those compare-contrast relationships. So there is mother, but then the opposite is not necessarily a stranger, because there could be an auntie, there could be a father, could be a brother, right? So there is a range. So we're actually learning what is by increasingly learning the range, what is not and to what extent. When I was little, I used to call all my teachers in kindy because I was raised in a communist country. So surely whatever flaws in my character I have, I attribute them to the fact that I was in kindy for a whole week since I was 3 months old. So literally, once I finished 3 months, a whole week until Saturday night. So for one day I was brought home. Yep, it's a good communist policy. So this is about contrasting and starting to sensitize ourselves to a range. So all our life is about expanding that range so that things become meaningful when we actually put a lot of things in the basket of what that particular thing is not. The more we know it, the more we know what it is not. Ambiguity comes in when we actually are not sure. We can't discriminate. Is it that and that? Or, ma'am, is an oak a tree or is it just an oak? Well, didn't you have a problem whether an oak is a tree or the oak is oak? You develop taxonomies and paradigmatic and syntagmatic relationships. By the way, these are actually gone. Nowadays, modern philosophers actually have gotten rid of the paradigmatic and syntagmatic, but it's a good, nice way to actually reflect what I wanted to say. So, okay. So what I did today is a number of things. Why did I bring the bananas back in? I didn't bring the other picture, but I will make a reference to it. What were the bananas example teaching us? The only thing you need to know when you come to the classroom, I mean, people say to you, will say to you, and you can quote me on it to protect yourselves. People say, what's your principles of teaching? What is your theory of learning? There's no such a thing like a theory of learning because nobody knows how learning happens. We can only use metaphors to describe what is happening. And sometimes neuroscience comes with research that confirms those metaphors. But I always tell my, not always, tell my students there's one phrase, one way we could describe what learning is. So what did the bananas teach us? If you have those bananas in your head every time you come to a classroom, that is all I want you to come out with from these classes. Literally, those activities you'll be creating for assignment 2, they are just exercises in imagination and in application of this principle. What did these bananas teach us? You remember? Well, they were teaching us about amnesia. What's amnesia? You can't remember things. And they were exactly about that. What the researcher in neuroscience was showing is that how we draw the world, how we actually manifest it, whether in writing or in drawing, is not exactly what is out there. Nobody who was healthy, mentally healthy, reproduced that picture as it was. The only people who reproduced it to a T were people who were mentally unhealthy. They had amnesia. Oh, that's very interesting. Why would you don't remember how we talked about it? And there's a text on that, but you don't have to read it now. But it's in your PowerPoint. It's on your LearnLine in many various ways. In the announcements, I think I put it everywhere. I don't know where I put it everywhere. Remember when the little girl in Piaget is asked to redraw a triangle, and what is she drawing? A square and then a dome, all of that. And now, if you are a simple person, which is what very often happens, people think curriculum outcome means this, therefore I will teach this. You forget that there is a world of thoughts, of steps between what the curriculum is. Actually, curriculum doesn't make a mistake. It's just the way we actually interpret it. The teacher thinks, okay, curriculum says we need to have students be able to draw triangles. They don't actually say, they say to recognize triangles in context, which is a much more interesting way to say it. And what does the teacher say? At the end of this class, all my kids are going to pop out with triangles. It's such a simplification, not only of a curriculum, but of processing. What this woman in neuroscience said, that people who don't have amnesia, they bring their processing into a drawing, the way they see the world. And it's not about interpretation. They always created this extended boundary. The bananas were never in those drawings right in the face. Nobody drew bananas right in the face because they knew that the world is bigger. They extended the boundary. Just like the children who, they see the triangle. If you put the pyramid here, they're not going to walk into it. They're going to lie on it and play with it, but they can see. But when they draw it, just like people with those bananas, because they have no amnesia, they have healthy processing, they extended the boundary. So it's not that they can't see the triangle, it's not that they can't draw it. It's just like people who are healthy here. They never drew bananas as they were, because they are not amnesiac, whatever it is. They have a built-in healthy processes that make them extend the boundary, and bananas are always a little bit at the back, right? So it's very interesting. So what I want you to remember every time, I want you to think of those bananas. Every time you see your little angels in your class, think of the bananas. Think that there is a difference between how you see the world and how children see the world. And it doesn't mean that you have to get them out of their world into your world. Because that critical participation, this mobile identity, this growth, is not about taking the child and molding him according to you. It's about making them able to do things, the creativity. So those bananas should stick in your head, and remember that you don't want at the end of the class children to draw triangles. You want them to creatively engage and watch what happens. You need to allow for the development. If children have this extended boundary, if they do extend the boundary, then there's a reason for it. So rather than seeing this as a disease, we need to now give them pills so that then they stop extending the boundary and become more amnesia-like. So rather than see it as a fault, see it that this is the source of their creativity, their ability to be in the world. They don't draw what they see because nobody does. So nobody does. So what we need to do, since this is, so we work with children, we don't work with outcomes that remove children from the process. We work with process, the process of engagement, and with children. We don't work with making kids to do what I feel forced to do by the curriculum, people tell me. There's not such a thing happening. It's just that very often people don't understand the curriculum, and we're going to look at the curriculum as well. Not today. All right. So this is our little bit of an exercise in imagination. We have a little evil game going here. Because very often throughout my experience in School of Education, because I used to work in a School of Languages, so that was a different experience. But in the School of Education, people often say to me, we start classroom with a discussion. So I thought, if that's so, look at our discussion. Lively, everybody has hands in the air, everybody is checking on the iPads the possible other questions and other... It's dead, isn't it? So I'm just making everybody feel. All right, but there's actually a method to it, and I'll reveal it to you sometime. Okay, so what we had, we worked with technology, and I was showing to students over the last so many weeks, and especially last week, that you can actually use technology and create with children an electronic book, an audio book, children who are pre-literacy children. They have no idea how to write and read. Okay. So they produced this audiobook with your help and with their all enthusiasm and joy and scream that's going to generate. And the principal will love it, unless it's a strange principal. All the principals I met in Darwin, they don't mind. They're happy. They bring, the project I will be doing, we're going to bring instruments to the literacy class and drums and all that stuff. It's going to be loud. I don't know about clear, but definitely loud.
Sorry to interrupt you. In one of our music, I don't know if you guys have done the music module, but in one of the modules, I think it was, might have been someone like Carl Orff or one of those conducted, whatever they call them.
Yeah.
He did exactly that. He used to come to class with the young kids with a storybook. It might be Little Red Riding Hood or Mouse and the Lion.
Yeah.
And he would get the kids to make or bring in different percussion instruments and recorders and stuff like that, and each of them would play little bits and pieces to go with the story.
So they would invent what? The rhythm?
Yeah.
The rhythm of it. That's exactly what I'll be doing, actually. I do talk to God. I woke up with that idea. I had no idea. I must have sort of somehow tuned in into this psychic field. I actually woke up with this idea what we're going to do. I literally, and lots of my good ideas come to me, but I've got good predecessors, like Albert Einstein dreams out stuff. What was this big, Da Vinci was dreaming out stuff, so I'm not embarrassed. Literally, I woke up and I go, yeah, drums. Why I'm gonna do that? Because they're little children. They don't have the frontal cortex. You can't explain all the stuff that they say in curriculum, explain to them and all of that. Ain't gonna work. They're not gonna have that thing fully functional until they're 25. And you'll be explaining to them the relationships in a sentence, and they'll be looking at you and you look gorgeous today. And it's all just like a blank in their head, eyes, right? So they've created these audiobooks, and they created this title page that you photographed and you put it there with the little head title, which whatever word was their favorite word, and they might have even, if you put it on the PowerPoint, they could have even recorded with their voice. By selecting and attaching voice, you can actually record the voice to the title in the PowerPoint. Right, but it ain't a story, because it starts like, Ella, my name is John, I'm 5, and this is my book. Well, is this how Cinderella starts? Ella, my name is Cinderella, and this is my story. Is it how it starts? No. So what do you do? I mean, on the one hand, you want to teach them something. I mean, they produced this book, and it's all cool, and they're happy, and they think it's all finished. And you go like, world is more, even if whether they're 5 or 15, say the world is more complicated. What do? Do you let them think that you can start a book? Does the bookie start, hello, my name is Bob, and I'm 5 years old? It's a tricky question, as all my questions are. Does the bookie start saying, hello, my name is Bob, and I'm 6 years old? Some of them would, wouldn't they?
I can't see a problem with it.
Okay, but my claim is all children books do that. Actually, all books start this way. You see how literacy is an exercise in imagination. Because as soon as I thought to I'm also teaching you how to think, right? So, of course, I'm sitting at home thinking, gee, we have this lecture. I've got to make this point because I have 300 slides there. I have to pick the ones that will make a point today, a coherent point. So I'm asking myself today, gonna write this, hello, my name is Bob, and I am 5-year-old. It's my bookie. I did it for my mommy. Okay. Or for children in the hospital, or for other children in a remote school to be friends with, just like you are with the off-campus students. So, and then I ask myself, well, now we need to teach them some expansion and some skills, right? So, and my first thought was like the conventional thought, no book starts with, hello, my name is Bob. And then I thought to myself, you instantly say, what about if they do? You have to ask yourself, every time you make a statement, the world looks blind, you say, oh, what about if it didn't? In what context it wouldn't? So can you actually think imaginatively? Why do I say that every book starts with, hello, my name is John, and this is my book, my story? Why do you think I say that? There are particular skills I don't teach you because it wasn't time for it. But there are particular skills you already know, and we will learn for another 6 weeks how to contextualize and how to draw on those skills. So lots of things you have learned so far, and they are very, very useful. It's just that if they are taught in a linear way, they're not useful. So why do I say that? Does Cinderella start with, hello, my name is blah? Sure it does. Sure it does. Have you actually looked at the cover of the book? It says, hello, read me. I'm for you. It's got all the drawings that a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old relates to. It says, hello, my name is a book, and I'm here And this is my story. It's not accident. You see what I'm saying? Oh, like imaginative thought. So rather than come to the classroom with your big book and say what you want to say, just this is how do we know it's a book, right? How many people have taught you that skill? What's on the thing? Blah blah blah. I think it's very linear. But if they have this audio book, and then you play with children, and you should have actually your resources. That's what I say. You have your PowerPoint with little pictures, icons, and you know which icon is for what. You can even title them. And you invite children to click on these icons like I have them here. So if you click on this thing, but if you have more icons, you have more selections. You have all the stories they know or they don't know yet, but very clear cover pictures. Keep stealing those things from, using your multimedia tools. You copy from Google the pictures of Cinderella or the pictures of whatever book, so children can very clearly recognize them. And you say, if we click here, let's have a look how that book starts. And it starts like once upon a time or something like that. And they get worried. Their book, but they don't get worried because they're little, right? But it starts differently. And you will say, actually, how can we now draw them to the fact that they could create a cover for their book that does what Cinderella does? Hello, I am a book produced for children. Exactly, children like you. I'm here to invite you to have a look what's inside. No different than what the child does, except that the child doesn't have a cover. So the child was talking. And what I'm not saying to you is, where? So Cinderella has a cover. And what's the cover saying? What is it saying? Oh, it's saying it's got this and that and that. What is it saying? I'm going to be an interesting story. Click and listen. Can we do the same ourselves for our book? And then they wonder how they're going to draw a cover story for their story. Do you see how you can break it down without necessarily coming to the class? So there's a skill, like introducing children to the fact that there's a cover, that there are pictures and how to read it. But in fact, children's stories can actually give you clues. If a child starts, hello, my name is Bob, blah, 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 that's a wonderful way to have a look now at how other people start books. And the first thing you can actually, rather than panic and say, well, books start with once upon a time or something to this effect, rather than panic, you think alternatively. Where is the hello? Look, I made it up. I'm not telling you that that's what the cover book says. I made it up. You can argue against it, but be hard. So a lot of ideas I give you, I made them up. There's no right, there is wrong when you actually don't work with children. But there is no one right. There are many rights. It's just your imagination, how you're going to play it. So you have kids, because they're little or whatever age, busy with drawing. Now you could actually break it down, if you wanted to, and analyze a few covers, so that the children don't redraw what they already know, or don't redraw Cinderella. They have a choice. And that's the point of everything I'll be teaching you for the next 6 weeks, which is when, and I've flagged it before, when children have a choice on which they can draw to create something new, with those choices, what do you give them? It's what's called, in our civilization, it's called tools. Like the stones, like the computer, like paper. You give them tools. So together, you could click on the picture of Cinderella and look at this, how the children's book is actually artistically represented. You can look at another one, another one, another one. That's why I always say you can't come to the classroom unprepared or just with a book. You bring a PowerPoint with all kinds of, and you can do it through the website as well, but I'm saying PowerPoint because and I'm using PowerPoint here just to make a point how much you can actually squeeze out of this little humble application for your purposes. So when students say to me, well, Anya, we don't know how to use Google Sites, actually most of you do by now. But it doesn't matter. On the PowerPoint, you can have there embedded lots of videos, lots of photographs. Children click using the interactive whiteboard, and they can explore how the story starts and how it relates to the cover. And now you can discuss the pictures, and now they can wrap it, rev it up, make Cinderella into now, I don't know, Catwoman. I don't know. Look, I'm really short when it comes to movies. I have no idea. I don't watch any never television. I don't go to cinemas. But kids do. Kids know all of those characters. So they will rev it up and they create whatever they want. That's what you want.
So you're suggesting it interact fraction fairy tale.
I don't. Well, that's at this very moment. We're just focusing on. At the end of the day, yes, exactly. That's where I'm going. But in order to create it, they need tools. So we're doing this step by step. So first, by actually making people aware that the book talks to them, which is really what I'm trying to say to you is when you relate to children and when you have this objective, when they are so little, you can't rationalize it. You can't talk to their frontal cortex, but you can talk to their little hearts. That's why in the first lesson I have said that they are little angels with little wings and little hearts. And you always get them on emotions. I mean, you probably have seen little children in your family and so on. So, is this good? And they go, wow. But if you want to explain it, it's just they're gone. You know. So there are ways of dealing. So at this very moment, so that's what we're trying to create, exactly. And the whole class today will be about that. So you've got the entire lesson, at least one, committed to exploring tools, discussing, comparing what one thing does. And you have them guessing, you've got them, if they don't want to open their mouth, they'll be clicking on yet another picture, yet another picture, yet another picture, until you get really tired of it. So you can only click on that many pictures, and then you will have actually them engage creatively. But they have tools, and that's what I remember how I said to you that you cannot make them listen to a story and then ask them to produce a story because you haven't taught them how to produce a story. There's 5 billion steps. They're 2 different activities. Listening to it and then producing one is 2 different things. So what we're doing now, once they actually got the idea that they can have an audiobook, they're 5, they're 6, they can't read very well, but they did the audiobook, they have a cover page. Now with you, they have redone the cover page. It's free. It's not just a title. Now they have a real thing. You have compared, contrasted. You take a picture of it. You put it on their little, as a cover of their book, of their audiobook on their own PowerPoint. You can use it first 1 or 2 or 3, and then you can do it for all of them, or they can do it for themselves if you have enough computers. So that's the cover. And then we're going to think about it, how our book started. So we will listen to your beginning. So what was your story about? And you'd say, it was about, they'll come up with something intelligent, and another person. And we would say to them, okay. So blackmail them. You know, I learned all the tricks of the trade from my mother. My mother was cheating me beyond belief. So, well, that's how you get them. My mother didn't say to me, get off those rocks because you're going to fall. I would never get off the rocks. But she would say to me, a princess wouldn't walk on the rocks. I was off those rocks in 2 seconds. And she had some tricks. So here they are. What's your bookie about? What's your story about? What's your story about? Okay, well, let's have a look. And you only let them play the first sentence. So after they've gone there, my name is Bob and blah, 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 we live through that. And then we want to hear the next one. And they're going to say, today is a great day. and they said to you the whole thing will be about a cat. So if the story is about the cat, you're wanting to hear what? Some mention of a damn cat, right? A lot of students I have who are postgraduate students, they write about the cat, but you don't hear about the cat until page 5. Now, if they are ESL students in Australia, you can imagine that the first 5 pages, which are going to lead to the cat, are in English. It is very hard to read. Very often it's also not divided into paragraphs, and very often they don't know how to write paragraphs. So imagine someone who has no time, who's a professor, reads that. And I discussed it with one of them yesterday or 2 days ago. And they said, oh, Anya, I get so sweaty and tired by the time I hit page 3 and there's no cat yet. So what you were saying to me, that the story has a beginning, middle, and end, and you know that I was laughing at it and saying, like, well, that doesn't take a genius to say that, right? But we're doing literacy. We need to think differently. So if a story has a cat, the beginning should be what I call the focus of the story. It's a focus. Once upon the time, it's already a focus into the genre, and then into a place or a person or something. So once upon the time focuses you already into the rhythm, into the genre, and then, so what was once upon the time? There was a little girl. So we know that that little girl is important. And rather than, and this is what my story about extended boundary and triangles, rather than spend a lesson on trying to finish the entire audiobook for it to look perfect, just explore the beginnings, just that focus. You've got another several meetings with those children in the same week. You can finish the audiobook in due course. Meanwhile, they learn a lot of skills. But you don't give them just Cinderella that starts with, now I have had enough experience in teaching these literacy classes that I know a few books, any children books. Obviously, I wasn't raised in Australia, so I don't have the repertoire. But can you think of native people who have been raised in English, on English books? What are the other possibilities? So once upon the time is one way to start a story. What's another one? It was a dark and stormy night. Isn't it the focus? Beautiful. Long, long ago, right? Okay, beautiful. I don't know whether English book starts like that, but let's assume that a long, long time, so once upon a time, long, long time ago. Okay, anything else? In Poland, we start behind the 7 seas, the 7 mountains, and the 7 forests. This is something about 7. You saw some books taught? You see how we're going to now use what we have seen, but we're trying to work with it in a non-linear way. So that what we do, we give children tools to work with. Like I'm saying, the only reason why you have me talk to you, and rather than always extract from you what you don't have or what you would not have, and it's going to take a while. What I want to do with us through these lectures and discussions, all the things we do, is to give you tools so that you can play with. And the same you do with children. You need to give them tools. So once upon a time, a long time ago, there was, what was it? Dark and stormy. How does it start? It was a dark and stormy night. Beautiful, beautiful. Any other things you can think of? I had really left of field students in this literacy, this one and another one. And I have some repertoire now. Okay, there's a book called something to the effect like The Bear's Nights Out. Do you know how it starts? In the bed. Out of the bed. Into the window. Through the window. To the tree. Up the tree. Down the tree. Through the fence. Over the fence. Because the unit was written by someone who really believed in grammar, We had this problem because obviously I wasn't going to tell you to teach 7-year-old children to memorize grammar, speech parts. So I had to sort of find a way to make my students think of the assignment differently. But one of my students found, because they had to write an assignment on prepositional phrases or adverbial phrases, and I just couldn't even look at it. So I was trying to find a way for them to problematize it. And one of my students found in the bed, adverbial phrase, out of the bed, to the window, through the window. And that was beautiful because this other person who wrote the unit, it was a long time ago, he had also action verbs that instantly gave me a chance to say to my students, where is the verb here? It's all action, not one verb. In the bed, where is the verb there? Out of the bed, it's all full of action, not a single verb there. Right. But there is a focus, so that the story doesn't start with the beginning, because it's what my mother could say, and she probably wouldn't. She's sophisticated enough not to actually start this way. But anybody can say it's a beginning. But if you say it has a focus, it opens the atmosphere of the genre, and also tells us what's important right there. So when you write your academic essay, people very often say to you, just tell us, what is this about? What it is about, what you will be arguing, what is your position? So that later on, even if you are not fluent with academic skills, I at least don't get lost. But if you tell me it is about, if you think about it, it is about a cat, and the cat doesn't appear until page 6, that's really asking a lot from us who are checking your assignment. And it starts with a 5-year-old. What also it teaches them is a sequence of thinking. So you can see all these things are in the curriculum. But when we teach sequence of thinking, we have a lesson on sequence of thinking. When we have something about the genre, we have a lesson on the genre. You don't have to do that. You can engage with 5-year-old in producing an audiobook and take these things and explore the context and tools to give them a chance, critically and creatively engage, which means explore which tool for them. That's critical and creative. And I'm going to do something completely different. Wonderful. And you as teachers have to be prepared, because it's probably going to be different. So don't get surprised. Don't fall off a chair. It's going to be very often out of this planet. So that's cool. So then when we have this now cover book that everybody relates to, it's theirs, it was informed, we explore. Meanwhile, as we were exploring cover books, we're also exploring how the books were starting, so they could realize that the beginning, my name is Anya, I'm 5 years old, and this is my first audio book. So that sentence, we don't get rid of it, because they're only 5, right? But what we used it is to make them aware that even a bookie talks to them. Even a bookie talks to them. So all of a sudden, the thing on the bookshelf is no longer an enemy that I don't want to read. It's a friend. It talks. Trust me, when you present it like this, they will believe you. All you have to do is to love them. I have postgraduate students, and they say to me, Anya, I don't know anything. And I said, if you walk to the class and you put on the hat of love, you can't go wrong. Just can't go wrong. Because children react to emotions, and even if you stuff it up pedagogically, you really won't. Because if you act through your heart, that they will get the message, whatever it is. So the book talks to them. Not only that, they can tell the difference between covers, and they have their own cover, and they have their own electronic books. 21st century, you know. My mommy uses this and this, and so do I. It's okay. I'm not having a problem with them drawing them the book, the whole thing on paper, no problem, but they still don't have literacy skills. They can't really write the text. That's why computer comes handy, because they don't have to write it, they can say it. The computer writes it for them. And we've done all of the discussion about it, what they gain from that process too. Would you like to add something, Professor?
Fine.
You're fine? Okay. Could you raise your arm or your hand when you want to add something? That'd be great. All right.
I'll have my way.
I'm going to make you hold that thought for a moment. Or maybe not yet. I'm going to push you a little bit further. So we could have out of the bed, we could have Cinderella, we could have that. What else could we have? Just pushing you a little bit. Where do you get your sources, your examples from? You know, you have to produce this PowerPoint in which you have pictures of different things. And children click on it and they hear. You know how to... Where will you get your examples from? So where do you look for information? Yeah.
And see what they're using.
So library and see what are appropriate.
About using it for 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds.
So appropriate texts for the appropriate age, so that they can explore those texts. That's great. I'll show you something now. You know how I often show you things that you can relate to as adults? Because if I show you Cinderella, you already have a habituated way of looking at it. So I've got to show you things which are still talking to you. I mean, which are now talking to you, not the past. You know
Would you dance if I asked you to dance? Would you run and never look back? Would you cry if you saw me crying? Would you save my soul tonight? Si pudiera ser tu héroe, si pudiera ser tu Dios, que salvarte de 1000 veces, puede ser mi salvación. I just wanna hold you.
Yes, he is working it.
Am I in too deep? Have I lost my mind? I don't care, you're here tonight. I can be your hero, baby. I can kiss away the pain, oh yeah. I will stand by you forever. You can take my breath away. Puedo ser tu héroe.
All right, any guesses why I picked that song? Oh, come on, girls. Come on. You know, we work together because girls can do stuff. Boys, yeah, but girls have... I don't know what boys don't. Come on, girls. So, why did I pick that song? Of that? He sang to the girl. That's a great thing. But there's... Why did he use Spanish? Because Spanish is romantic. I love that answer because this is not how I thought about it. But you know what happens?
They all looked like they were falling in love with him.
Yeah. But you know what happens? What I teach you is going to happen to you. It happens to me in here. But the kids will come up with amazing stuff. There you go. So, any other ideas? Spanish is romantic. English is not.
It could be because that's his first language.
It's his first language. That is a very good thing. His name is Carlito. So it's L1 basically it's called. First language, his first language, his first language. Any other idea? Come on, girls. Make it up. I make up everything. Even the thing I'll be teaching you will be so convincing, but I made it up. So, any minute. You'll hear it, you'll believe me, and you will practice it. And if someone one day tells you that it's not that way,
He could have done that to make it more memorable too.
why would it be more?
Because everybody else gets up there and goes, oh, you know, once a jolly swag, man can, and they all sing in English.
Yeah.
So for him to get up there and do that, people would remember it more because it's probably something they're not exposed to.
Okay, because there was a difference, right? There was a difference. So we'll just write it down. There was a difference in production, right? There was some sort of difference, a memorable difference. Grabs your attention, because it's a memorable difference because it grabs your attention. Okay. Do you want to hear my story about it? I'll give you three ways to think about stuff. So when you sing in your first language to the audience, you certainly stir emotions. We hate your country. Could be. So you do it on purpose. You never open your mouth unless there is a reason. You select your tools critically. Every time you said something, it's a new thing. Even if it's a thing that everybody says in this context, because you said it and because you brought your vibration into it, it's a new thing. So when we open our mouth, when you can think of interaction, some people in traditional pedagogies, they talk about interaction like playing tennis, as if playing tennis was, I give a sentence to you, you give a sentence to me back. I give a sentence to you, you give me is this how tennis is? I throw the ball, this is how I play tennis. I throw the ball to you, hopefully you throw it back to me the way that I can hit it back at you, right? That's how I play tennis, but that's not what tennis is it? You play to win. You play to win. And when you talk to win. Can you think abstractly enough about the concept of winning? You use tools for the outcome or for the effect that will work. Right? So when you see a girl and or a teacher you hate, but you cannot say to them, you cannot ignore them. So what do you say? Hi. We may not make an eye contact, or you'll be brief with that. There will be tools you will be using to play to win, which means to be honest to yourself, or not to exaggerate. You don't really want her to know that you love her because that would create some other sequence of events, and you don't want to be there. Okay, so we play to win. We use the tools creatively that we know, but we took from the world, from our observations of covers of books, right? For example. So we use those tools in order to actually, for the best effect. So we say something, and then there's a why we said it this particular way. So if I was, for example, I can't think of different contexts, okay? So my limitations are there. If I was German, half Polish, and it was a war, and the Germans occupied Poland, and I stood on the stage and I sang half of the song in Polish and the other half in German, what would happen to me? What do you think? I would never leave that stage alive. Right? So you either are half-wit and people see it, or you are there to stir emotions because you want to say, I'm a pro-German. Well, you're dead at the end. Right? So why is he singing Spanish? Where is this show? Well, why is he singing Spanish? Because by now, probably 3/4 of Americans are bloody Spanish. Right? Now, there was a very smart man who happened to have died, unfortunately. His name was Bourdieu. There were other people, I can't remember his name. My PhD student talks about this other guy who's apparently famous in the fields of education. Whatever, Bruce something, I can't remember. So Bourdieu talks about capital. The other guy talks about profits. Because if you play to win, you look something that will give you a profit. It will give you the outcome you wanted. And Bourdieu talks about educational capital, social capital, and symbolic capital. And rather than produce to you extensive definitions of what it means, in this song, what was the educational capital? He knew that half of his audience, if it's not Spanish, that would be not possible. Half of it would be Spanish, of Latin origin. What else? They know Latin people, and Latin culture is permeating through American culture quite well, right? So he knows that his country is not monolingual and monocultural. And he has a tool, the memorable difference, right? He has a tool. He actually is native. He's part of it. So he's not only an American who loves Latin culture, he actually is an American who also lives between the two, or with the two, if we could talk about it as two. So he brought into the song his educational capital. I speak English and I speak Spanish. And I understand that speaking Spanish counts as a good thing. And when we go through all the capitals, I will explain. Counts as a good thing because there are people there who relate to it. And so when someone said it is his first language, that wasn't enough, because you need to include why he's using it. So if his first language was German and he would have been singing during the war in Poland, when Poland was really unhappy with the Germans, it wouldn't be a good thing to show off your first language. So when he is using Spanish, he's using to stir, to put the people on his side. He's there to win their hearts, because whether he stays in the competition or not depends whether he can get this audience on his side. A lot of times these competitions are lost by beautiful singers and artists who are not mature enough yet to know how to do it. And people call them fake, because they don't have a heart. They do have it, but they let other people run it, and that's bad. So he knows Spanish. He's social capitalist. He knows how to play with it. He knows how to network. He's networking with his audience. So the social capitalist, he knows how to use his Spanish culture or his Spanish education. He knows how to network with people. He knows how to link up with people. He's creating now connections with the audience. But why is he doing that? I mean, most of those people in the audience are bilingual at least. They don't need it to hear it in Spanish. This is something you need to know, and I assume you both have a different first language, and very often first language people feel it but don't verbalize it. But I already had education in so many languages, so I have this capacity to actually verbalize it. What is it when you hear the song, which is always sung in English, all of a sudden is sung in Spanish? What symbolic capital you are drawing on to win?
Emotions. The other person's emotions.
Yeah, but everything is emotions. Magdala is working all the time here, all across the board. So everything is emotions. But so what?
And familiarity, maybe. Symbolizes your country.
This country is America. No, there's no Spanish country here. First of all, I would suggest, this is how you make it up, but you need to prepare yourself before the class, because literally what is almost less relevant. What's important that you have taxonomy against which you can then expand exploration with children. How I will interpret these three things for you today in regard to this song doesn't matter. You can sort of use my ways of working with it, but what I wanted you to be, you're not semioticians. You're not gonna go to write a book about the cultural theory of the symbolic capital. It's just there with children. So all you need is three different points of focus that will give you three perspectives from which you can actually analyze, and that's all that matters. So symbolic here, Spanish counts. Spanish counts. That's symbolic. Spanish counts because very often being Negro, Spanish, or Latino, or Mexican did not count. And he's in the X factor saying Spanish counts. That's the first thing. Why is one of the women in the jury goes nuts? Look at her hair. Look at her face. What do you think she is? She ain't looking to me like a Swedish woman. She doesn't look anything like me. Like that might be dyed, but all underneath, which is reddish brown and a lot of blonde, doesn't look like her hair. I mean, if you painted that dark hair on my hair, I would look like a freaking ghost. Just that, or if you painted her blonde, would have been also out of sorts. She's Spanish. When you hear, this is something very important because you're gonna work with children. Like my friend, I call them friends. All my students are friends, but she's my postgraduate student, and she showed me her children from a photo of her children in Parab school, the little. Half of them, at least, 52% of them are from everywhere. Everywhere. You have a whole planet in one little group. When you hear things in your language was the language that shaped your brain, that shaped your movement, that shaped the way you breathe, that shaped your posture, the way you walk. Australian women walk completely differently than American women, and they walk completely differently than the French women. The posture is different. Everything is different. The language and its rhythm and the stories it brings with you shapes your body. Your language, what I used to call it, your language is in your bones. When someone says to you in your native language, I love you, you hear it. When they say it in a foreign language, you kind of know the function, but you don't feel it. Someone once, in Canberra, there was some few, early in the morning, I would cycle, and there were a few thugs on the street, and there was me and another girl, and they wouldn't move off the road. We couldn't, and there was nowhere to go because it's where they had this development on the lake, foreshore development. There was nowhere to go but there. And then they called me. I just what do you call it? I rang the bell, and they sort of after a while. But as we were going past them, they called me every name. And I sat on this bike, and I thought, you can. Actually, now, after being 30 years in Australia, or 27 back then, I thought to myself, to me, those words are like a text in the dictionary. Kind of someone explained it to me what that means. I feel nothing. If they said it in Polish, the adrenaline would have gone, right? I would have been running. Something would have happened to me. But because they called me anything they wanted, and it was in English, what do I care? I don't hear it. The same goes with processing. That's why we're bringing the drums. There's a different rhythm. Your language gave you the rhythm in which you breathe. So when your teacher expects from you to process things, they will sometimes think that an ESL child needs just to read, even if they are relatively okay in English, that they will be processing at in the same way or the same speed as a native speaker. The problem is that the person who speaks more than one language has more databases to draw on. Well, I've got 5. My husband has 8. And they come in because the brain doesn't know what signal is going to come. So the brain is still sort of selecting. But what very often teachers do, and that happened in one of the, I went to a particular seminar, and the teachers were given a task, and all of the teachers were from different countries. And the teacher and the person who was giving the seminar was English, and the person who was with him was also of Australian background. So they gave the teachers a task. But meanwhile, as teachers were reading these complicated articles in English and assessing them, they chatted to each other in English. So what was my body hearing? The intonation and the rhythm of English at the same of their English, but of spoken. But I had to read texts I've never seen before. I had to process it in my way, not in that spoken casual rhythm that they were actually bringing out in my brain. They were interfering with my rhythm. I couldn't read. For them, it was you just read. No, I have 5 rhythms now interfering with the task because they all are helping me to actually process this one paragraph. But I can't read it because the way I read in English is not the same that they expect me to. For me, it was difficult, and I actually told them to be quiet. And they were experienced people. They just when you don't work when you don't push yourself academically in your other languages, you don't actually experience it. So, what we have, capital, Spanish. He had an understanding that the audience is half Spanish minimum by virtue of normality in America. He used the Spanish thing because he wanted to network. He wanted their hearts, and he knew when they hear the song in Spanish, they're gonna feel the song. So he said, and the second time when he sang the chorus part was in English, so that the English people could relate to it. He gave it to the both sides, and he had them. And the Spanish woman went like this. Why? Because then she felt the song. The words were like talking to her stomach. Forget the heart.
I like that. Can I give you an example?
Yeah. Just wait for a second. I have to give you the microphone.
Because that really connects with me. If I may share with you a poem that I wrote because I inhabit this multicultural, multilingual world. I speak Chinese, but Chinese, as you know, has many language codes. Some of them call it dialects, but when you say it's a dialect, then you patronize it and you trivialize it. But actually, someone who speaks Hakka may not be able to speak Cantonese. It is unintelligible except for certain commonalities. But really, a Hakka person may not understand Cantonese person or a Hokkien person, so I call it languages. So I speak several Chinese languages, as well as English and Bahasa Malaysia in all its varieties. When I was